incredibly productive week in the House, obviously with the big headline today of getting right to work truly agreed to and finally passed. Incredibly proud of the way our caucus and frankly the Democrat caucus have worked together on this issue. It's obviously an issue that stirs some deep passions on both sides, but it's an issue that we think is critical to the economic future of Missouri. We followed that up today, obviously, with two tort reform measures, collateral source that Representative McGaugh has been working very hard on, and the expert witness bill, which Representative Corlew has been working on now for, I believe, 3 years. So incredibly proud of their work and the work of our members to get that stuff through the chamber this week. So with that, I'm going to turn it over first to Representative Rader to talk a little bit about right to work.
It's a huge win for Missouri. The states that have passed in the last few years have shown unemployment drop considerably. So I think that this is a big deal for all Missouri working families. And I'm very excited to get it to the governor's desk. I think that it's not a silver bullet, but it's definitely a tool in our toolbox now. And we can move on to some other things to make Missouri even more business friendly.
You said you didn't think the bill needed what the Senate added in terms of grandfathering existing contracts in. Was that just done because they needed to get it through the Senate that way, or is there more there?
You know, those way above me on the pay grade decided that was something that was very important with the Missouri Supreme Court, and the states that have passed it most recently did include the grandfather clause. I don't feel that it's necessary. I think this is a great economic development policy, and I think that it needed to go into place right away. But it was definitely, something that I needed to bend on, so we did.
I know you mentioned that other states have seen economic prosperity in the last 5 years that they've passed the bill, but almost every single state in the union has improved economically since the Great Recession, and that recovery has been over the last 5 years. So do you think that that's the best metric to really look at those states in terms of whether or not this is really going to provide those economic benefits?
I think that it's definitely one of the metrics because they've increased more than Missouri has. And so I think that that's a glaring difference between us. And so I do feel that it's one of many metrics, but definitely a huge part.
If you look specifically at wage growth in right-to-work states versus non-right-to-work states, it's an absolute fact that over the last decade, wages are growing faster in right-to-work states than they are in non-right-to-work states. And it's an important point. If you look at Missouri's economy, while we've seen improvement in the unemployment rate, we have not seen wages growing in this state at a rate anywhere near what they're growing in the rest of the country. So when we're talking about trying to help working families in Missouri, the way we're going to do that is by finding a way to get wages growing at a faster rate than they are today. And I know Representative Rader has been absolutely relentless at talking about this point. And if you look at those wage stats in right-to-work versus non-right-to-work states, the growth is happening in right-to-work states.
This has been such a big Republican priority for so many years. How does it feel to be the rep that was carrying the bill that finally got through?
Hey, it feels great, but it's just great getting the policy done. So I would have been happy. Eric Burleson, Representative Burleson, carried it for so many years. It was so exciting for me to see him up on the dais next to Mr. Speaker, because he has been so passionate about this since I got here, a little over 4 years ago. And I love that he was able to be here to share in that win. He's definitely been the one pushing it. Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder, I wish he could have been here as well, because those gentlemen have really been at the forefront of this. And I'm humbled that I was the one to get to finish it.
Mr. Speaker, paycheck protection, I believe, is sitting atop the perfection calendar, and somewhere out there in the ether is prevailing wage. Do you have the same sense of urgency to move those bills that you had with this one?
Look, as I said at the beginning of the session, we're going to continue to work through these priorities. We're going to continue to work through them at a fairly aggressive pace. I think that's what the voters of Missouri expect us to do. When we're in session January to May and the taxpayers are paying us, they want us to be here in session working. So I know the floor leader is going to be working hard to get those priorities floor time and through the process. But we're going to continue to work diligently, but we're going to also be working with haste.
not to get too off topic here, Representative Rader and maybe Speaker Richardson too, but I know prevailing wage is another one of those labor priorities that's coming up. I've spoken with Representative McGaugh on this. I just wanted to know what kind of incarnation are you looking at that bill to take? Because there are so many, I think 7 that are in committee right now. Which one is going to be the one? Which one's going to get the rose, I guess?
You know, and we're not 100% sure which one's going to get the star, but the Senate passed out full repeal, and so we will most definitely pass out Representative Love's full repeal from committee, but we're also working on a committee substitute. Representative McGaugh and I have had discussions with all parties involved, and we look forward to putting together some common sense changes that can help immediately our smaller counties, our school districts, and so we definitely want a couple vehicles, and then let it, find out how the body feels about it.
I'll give, switching gears a little bit off of right to work, I'll give Representative McGaugh and then Representative Corlew a chance to talk about some of the tort reform measures, which were obviously another central piece of our economic agenda.
Much in the same light as right to work, we've been fairly aggressive on tort reform. We continue to see reports coming out of not only St. Louis but all the state of Missouri that employers are looking at. Just like right to work's a tool that employers look at, they also look at the tort environment in the state. So what we've done with collateral source is just a small step to try to equalize the courts, to make it fair not only for plaintiffs but defendants. And what we're doing on collateral source is just a small part of the damages that plaintiffs ask for. And it's a common sense approach. We had 94 votes last year that made it to the governor's desk, so it wasn't able to be overridden. But we hope this year that the governor will look strongly at this. He hasn't specifically mentioned collateral source, but this is a first step in tort reform in Missouri.
Kevin?
I'm happy that the House today passed out the expert witness bill, a bill that we've been working on for 3 years. We send that now to the Senate, and I'm confident that they'll be able to continue getting this to the governor's desk. This is an expert standard that more than 2/3 of the states have implemented to increase the reliability of expert evidence in their courts. This is a good step to make sure that convictions in criminal cases or judgments in civil cases that involve scientific principles are really based upon reliable evidence and not upon junk science.
How's it going?
Anything else on the tort reform pieces? Okay, fire away with whatever else you got.
We've seen the governor's proposed budget yet. It came online about an hour or 2 ago.
As you might imagine, we've been a little busy for the last hour or so, so I've not had a chance to look at it in much detail. I know the budget chairman has been working to get through that, but we'll be ready to go to work on the governor's budget starting next week. Scott, do you want to address anything specifically?
Well, look, I mean, we said, and we've been saying for several months that there are going to be a lot of difficult decisions that have to be made for the next year's budget. And, I'm going to commend the governor because he, from what I can tell, has given us the best starting point that we've had since I've been here. This is my 5th year on the budget committee. And, we're going to look at every decision that he's proposing, and we'll go through them line by line, and we'll, get as much information about those as we can, and we'll see what the House budget will likely be a little bit different than the governor's, but that's how the process works. And I will say without a doubt that this is the best budget that we've received from a governor to start to work with since I've been here. So there are a lot of things that are going to be difficult, but I'm appreciative that he's given us something to work with here.
Looks like it's 13 million for social services, 12.6 last year, so it looks like an increase this year. Is that right?
Sorry, say that again.
Looks
For
like
social
services, it looks like it's 13 million in his proposed budget versus Nixon's last year. I think it was 12.6
million.
billion.
Billion?
Sorry.
No, I think we're off a few digits, but
I'm sorry.
There are different ways to measure what social services are. I mean, we've got 3 departments: mental health, health and senior services, and DSS. And if you combine all those together, that might be roughly an okay number. I can tell you that that there were increases in those programs, particularly in Medicaid, due to caseload increase and just the increasing cost of health care in general. So yeah, I mean, there was growth there, and that's what we've talked about is the mandatory items, because if you don't pay those, then hospitals don't get paid for the services they're providing to Medicaid patients. And so the governor's, I'm sure, talked about that in his address. We've been in here, but I know that I've talked to him about that, and we are on the same page that healthcare costs are what's causing us the most pain in the budget right now.
The Department of Agriculture has like a 70% cut, goes from 22 million to 6 million. Is that something you'll be looking at? Something that you're going to keep with Bobby for?
Keep with what? That was last.
70%.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, we'll look at that. Honestly, I mean, 22. That's $18 million. So, it's in the grand scheme of the state budget, it wasn't on the high, the top 10 things. Sorry, the top 10 things that had been done. We'll look at that. There's probably some biodiesel. The biodiesel thing may have gotten cut out of that. There's a lot of lines in the budget, so I haven't had a chance to get through all of them, but we'll look at that one in due time.
Keep in mind, we've had the budget for a little over an hour now, so I can guarantee you Chairman Fitzpatrick will be back next week to answer a lot of specific questions on the budget, but understand that we're just starting the budget process here.
Speaking of, are we going to start seeing some of those appropriations bills going out next week? Or
Now, we're probably not going to file the bills right away. We're going to look at the governor's bills, and I mean, we're not in any rush to file the bills because it's likely going to be, later in March before the bills leave committee. So there's not, I mean, we can begin the department testimony right away. We're going to start on Tuesday with department testimony, and that'll go through the month of February. And then the appropriations committees will do their work in marking up their recommendations to the full budget committee, and then we'll work on the chairman's substitutes and go from there. So we likely won't file bills next week. It'll probably be a couple of weeks at least before we do that.
Thanks.